All right, guys, I'm gonna have to keep checking this video to make sure that it's focused on the board. My books are not holding up my phone so easily today, but I think we got it here. So today I'm gonna go over hearing the sweetest songs. And what we're gonna start with is I'm going to read the story. Okay, so this might take a couple minutes. So hearing the sweetest song by Nicolette Toussaint. This was from Newsweek, May 23rd, 1994. Every year when I was a child, a man brought a big black squeaking machine to school. When he discovered I couldn't hear all his peeps and squeaks, he would get very excited. The nurse would draw a chart with a deep canyon in it. Then I would listen to the squeaks 2 or 3 times while the adults, who were all acting very, very nice, would watch me raise my hand. Sometimes I couldn't tell whether I heard the squeaks or just imagined them, but I liked being the center of attention. My parents said I lost my hearing to pneumonia as a baby, but I knew I hadn't lost anything. None of my parts had dropped off. Nothing had changed. If I wanted to listen to Beethoven, I could put my head between the speakers and turn the dial up to 7. I could hear jets at the airport a block away. I could hear my mom when she was in the same room, if I wanted to. I could even hear my cat purr if I put my good ear right on top of him. I wasn't aware of not hearing until I began to wear a hearing aid at the age of 30. It shattered my peace. Shoes creaking, papers crackling, pencils tapping, phones ringing, refrigerators humming, people cracking knuckles, clearing throats, and blowing noses. Cars, bikes, dogs, cats, kids all seemed to appear from nowhere and fly right at me. I was constantly startled, unnerved, agitated, exhausted. I felt as though inquisitorial Nazis in an old World War II film were burning the side of my head with a merciless white spotlight. Under that onslaught, I had to break down and confess. I couldn't hear. Suddenly, I began to discover many things I couldn't do. I couldn't identify sounds. One afternoon, while lying on my side watching a football game on TV, I kept hearing a noise that sounded like my cat playing with a flexible spring doorstop. I checked, but the cat was asleep. Finally, I happened to lift my head as the noise occurred. Heard through my good ear, the metallic buzz turned out to be the referee's whistle. I couldn't tell where sounds came from. I couldn't find my phone under the blizzard of papers on my desk. The more it rang, the deeper I dug. I shoveled mounds of paper onto the floor and finally had to track it down by following the cord from the wall. When I lived alone, I felt helpless because I couldn't hear alarm clocks, vulnerable because I couldn't hear the front door open, and frightened because I wouldn't hear a burglar until it was too late. Then one day I missed a job interview because of the phone. I had gotten off the subway 20 minutes early, eager and dressed to the nines, but the address I had written down didn't exist. I must have misheard it. I searched the street, became overheated, late, and frantic, knowing that if I confessed that I couldn't hear on the phone, it would make my odds of getting hired even worse. For the first time, I felt unequal, disadvantaged, and disabled. Now that I had something to compare, I knew I had lost something. Not just my hearing, but my independence and my sense of wholeness. I had always hated to be seen as inferior, so I never mentioned my lack of hearing. Unlike a wheelchair or a white cane, my disability doesn't announce itself. For most of my life, I chose to pass as abled and thought I did it quite well. But after I got a hearing aid, a business friend said to me, "You know, Nicolette, you think you could get away with not hearing, but you don't. Sometimes in meetings you answer the wrong question. People don't know you can't hear, so they think you're daydreaming, eccentric, stupid, or just plain rude. It would be better to just tell them." I wondered about it then, and I still do. If I tell, I risk being seen as unable rather than disabled. Sometimes when I say I can't hear, the waiter will turn to my companion and say, "What does she want?" as though I have lost my power of speech. If I tell, people may see only my disability. Once someone is labeled deaf, crippled, mute, or aged, that's too often all they are. I'm a writer, a painter, a slapdash housekeeper, a gardener who grows wondrous roses. My hearing is just part of the whole. It's a tender part, and you should handle it with care. But like most people with a disability, I don't mind if you ask about it. In fact, you should ask, because it's an important part of me. Something my friends see as part of my character. My friend Ann always rests a hand on my elbow in parking lots, since several times drivers who assume I hear them have nearly run me over. When I hold my head at a certain angle, my husband Mason will say, "It's a plane," or "It's a siren." And my mother loves to laugh about the times I thought I heard. Last week, I was told that the monitors in the garden are getting out of hand. I imagined capering Bullman, and I was disappointed to learn that all we had in the garden were overgrown baby tears. Not hearing can be funny or frustrating, and once in a while, it can be a cause of something truly transcendent. One morning at the shore, I was listening to the ocean when Mason said, "Hear that bird?" "What bird?" I listened hard until I heard a faint, unbird-like croaking sound. If he hadn't mentioned it, I would have never noticed it. As I listened slowly, I began to hear, or perhaps imagine, a distant song. Did I really hear it? Or was it just in my heart that he shared with me? I don't care. Or just hear in my heart what he shared with me. I don't care. Songs imagined are as sweet as songs heard, and songs shared are sweeter still. That sharing is what I want for all of us. We're all just temporarily abled, and every one of us, if we live long enough, will become disabled in some way. Those of us who have gotten there first can tell you how to cope with phones and alarm clocks, about ways of holding a book, opening a door, and leaning on a crutch all at the same time, and what it's like to give up in despair on Thursday, then begin all over again on Friday, because there's no other choice, and because the roses are beginning to bud in the garden. These are conversations we should all have, and it's not that hard to begin. Just let me see your lips when you speak, stay in the same room, don't shout, and ask what you want to know. Okay. So story's read, then you should annotate. Annotate the story. Okay, we're gonna make that part of the grade. Then, let's go to the questions here. So, question, I guess it'd be 45. You have this in front of you, so if you can't see perfectly, just look at the paper in front of you. Make sure you can see on the camera. Okay, so 45. Why does the author use sensory images in paragraph 3? So if you go back to paragraph 3, it says, I wasn't aware of not hearing until I began to wear a hearing aid at the age of 30. It shattered my peace. Shoes creaking, papers crackling, pencils tapping, phones ringing, refrigerators humming, people cracking knuckles, clearing throats, and blowing noses. Cars, bikes, dogs, cats, kids all seem to appear from nowhere and fly right at me. So why would she include something like this? Okay, so if we look at our choices, we have to illustrate that hearing so well was disturbing. Okay, all of a sudden she hears all kinds of noises, but it was too much to handle. So that is pretty disturbing. So I'm going to keep that one. B says to describe her irrational fear of sound. Well, she's not scared, she's just overwhelmed. So I'm going to get rid of that one. To prove that she really didn't need a hearing aid. She did, because these were things she had never noticed before. So she really did need the hearing aid. And D says to communicate that she was frequently interrupted. There didn't say anything about her being interrupted. It was just a lot to handle all at once. So the author uses those images to let us know that hearing so well was disturbing to her. It was just a little too much at that point. So that's question 45. 46. In which line does the author use alliteration to support the primary message of the selection? So when we're talking about alliteration, remember that is beginning sounds. So we need to find the ones that have alliteration to begin with. So look at F. For the first time I felt unequal, disadvantaged, and disabled. Okay, that does have alliteration. I'm not gonna look at the other part yet about the message. I'm just gonna look and say, okay, it has alliteration. Let me keep that. G says, I listened hard until I heard a faint, unbird-like croaking sound. Well, I don't see anything that shows me alliteration in that one, so get rid of G. Songs imagined are as sweet as songs heard, and songs shared are sweeter still. That is definitely a lot of alliteration, so I'm gonna keep F and H. I imagined capering Bullman, and I was disappointed to learn that all we had in the garden were overgrown baby tears. Looking don't see alliteration. So now between F and H, I need to decide which one's showing the message. So for the first time, I felt unequal, disadvantaged, and disabled. Okay, that happens once, but the whole point of her story is to let us know she doesn't feel this way. She feels like she's just everyone else. There are certain things in her life that have made her feel this way at times, but she's still just a normal person like the rest of us. H says, songs imagined are as sweet as songs heard, and songs shared are sweeter still. Well, the title of our story is Hearing the Sweetest Songs, and even though she can't always hear everything, and sometimes she imagines things, there's still sweet songs to her. It's still just as good. So even though sometimes she's disabled and can't hear everything, she's okay with that. Okay, so H is better than F. This is just a small part of her journey. This is the whole thing. That it's okay to be disabled. She still is okay with that. She understands it. And it's still a sweet life to her. So H is the best choice there. Okay, let's move on to 47. So 47 says, read the sentence from paragraph 15. Remember that when you get boxes like this, pay attention to only what's in the box. Ignore the rest of the story. Hate to tell you that, but you need to ignore the rest of the story when you see a quote in a box. They do this on purpose because there's going to be choices that sound good, but they have to do with the rest of the story, not this box. So this says, we're all just temporarily abled, and every one of us, if we live long enough, will become disabled in some way. The author makes this statement to suggest what? That she really isn't different from other people. Okay, we're all just temporarily abled. We're all of us, every one of us. Okay, so this is showing that we're all the same. So I'm gonna keep that one because she's not really different because we're all like this, just at different times. Disabilities are affecting people with increasing frequency. She's not saying that this is happening more. It's just that eventually we all start to lose some ability that we have as we become older. So B is not a good choice. C says she was fortunate enough to have developed her disability at a young age. She's not saying she's fortunate enough. She's just saying we're all going to face some kind of disability eventually. So we're not all different. And people should prepare themselves for becoming deaf. Okay, she's not saying everyone's going to become deaf because she talks about how we'll all be disabled in some way. She doesn't say one day we're all not going to be able to hear. I'm the first one. So it's not about being deaf. So she really isn't different from other people is our best option out of these four. Okay. Look at 48. Let me erase this. Okay, which line from the article does the author reveal how she would like others to respond to her lack of hearing? So this is where you have to decide when she talks to you, she talks to the audience. Where does she tell us how she wants us to respond? I had always hated to be seen as inferior, so I never mentioned my lack of hearing. Well, this doesn't tell you, the reader, anything. That's how other people have been treating her, how she doesn't want people to respond to her. If I tell, people may see only my disability. Again, this is still what she doesn't want people to do, and this is not advice for us. So get rid of G. Unlike a wheelchair or a white cane, my disability doesn't announce itself. This is not advice, it's just a fact. It's a tender part and you should handle it with care. You should. This is what she wants us to do. This is how she wants others to respond. This is her advice. So J is our best choice. Okay, a couple more here. 49. In paragraph 9, the author suggests that when she started using a hearing aid, she what? So we have to look back at paragraph 9. let me look back at mine. It says, for the first time, I felt unequal, disadvantaged, and disabled. Now that I had something to compare, I knew I had lost something. Not just my hearing, but my independence and my sense of wholeness. I had always hated to be seen as inferior, so I never mentioned my lack of hearing. Unlike a wheelchair or white cane, my disability doesn't announce itself. For most of my life, I chose to pass as abled and thought I did quite well. So what is that showing us? When she started using a hearing aid, did she feel better prepared for job interviews? That's not in that paragraph. Was able to enjoy watching television? Not in that paragraph. Experience a sense of loss. She does say, for the first time I felt unequal, disadvantaged, and disabled. I knew I had lost something. It says that right in the paragraph, so let's keep C. Was embarrassed about wearing it. Doesn't say that in paragraph 9. This is actually right in there. It says I experienced a sense of loss. It says it right in there. So C is our best choice for 49. And then last multiple choice, 50. Erase this. Why does the author conclude, so finish the article, by addressing the reader directly? Remember, she says you at the very end. So at the very end, let me reread that. These are conversations we should all have, and it's not that hard to begin. Let me just see your lips when you speak, stay in the same room, don't shout, and ask what you want to know. So why does she end it this way? Is it to include us in a joke? Well, I didn't see anything funny there. To highlight the most important aspects of a conversation. She's not talking about having a conversation. She's talking about how to treat people like her who have a disability. To suggest that most non-hearing people do not need hearing aids. And this is how to help or address people with disabilities, what she wants you to do, her advice. To instruct the reader how to treat people with hearing difficulties. Yes, this is how she wants to be treated. She wants you to ask and take your time. So J is our best choice. Okay, the last thing you have to do is this short answer. This needs to look like a body paragraph. So if you lost points, here's what you didn't do. This says, after reading Hearing the Sweetest Songs, do you think the author considers herself disabled? Now this is going to be up to you depending on what evidence you find. Explain your answer and support it with evidence. So you have to have that. You needed a topic sentence. So you needed to restate the question. You needed an example. So you needed a quote, and you didn't drop it in. So you said, in the story, the author explains, Nicolette explains. You gave me an introduction. Then you had to explain it, explain the quote. You had to tie it back to your topic sentence. How did you prove this? And then you needed a concluding sentence. So this is overall, what did you just write about? So in order to get all the points for this question, you needed to have all those parts.